There were big expectations for Frankie on Egghead Island because who else but the cyborg is going to shine on a technologically advanced futuristic island 500 years in the future, and Frankie did have his moments, but just not in the way that everyone anticipated him to. Although there wasn't any actual build-up for him to have a starring role beyond that connection of technology science, and that is where things are different here. We have Usopp, whose build-up to this arc has been in the making for 25 years. In Little Garden, where his dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea was visualized, was personified for him to see in the form of Dory and Broggy's duel, which is still ongoing. In each arc where there have been giants of Elbaf, Usopp has been at the forefront. In Little Garden I just mentioned, then Oimo and Kashi on Enies Lobby, and Hirudin on Dressrosa. I wonder if the tales of Usopp or Soge King have already begun to spread on Elbaf before the Straw Hats had even arrived, since that infamy is about to increase tenfold. And back to his dream, because there are those who say that Usopp has already achieved it. Even if he's still a liar, still a bit of a coward, he can confidently call himself a brave warrior of the sea. And I 100% agree, Usopp is already a brave warrior. He's helped to defeat warlords, emperors, he's invaded world government territory, he's faced off with each of the three great powers and survived. That is more than enough to make him greater than 99.9% of people in the entire One Piece world. Or maybe it was even earlier than that, before he even put his foot on that barrel and declared his dream out loud. The very moment that Usopp made his decision to set foot on the Going Merry for the first time as a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, he accomplished his dream. Right there and then. That one's a lot more metaphorical, thematic, because if he immediately stepped off of the ship and then ran back home, I don't think he would have the right to call himself a brave warrior of the sea. But the one key bit of information is that, in my opinion, is that our viewpoint doesn't matter. All of that is from our perspective. This is our external opinion as to whether or not we think Usopp has achieved his dream, when really the only metric to measure if Usopp has become a brave warrior of the sea or not, how close he is or how far he is what Usopp he himself thinks. It's unlike the dreams of each of the other Straw Hats, which are much more tangible. Like, to become the world's greatest swordsman, Zoro has to defeat Mihawk to become king of the pirates, Luffy has to find the One Piece, drawing a map of the world, the All Blue, curing all diseases, and so on. Maybe Jinbei's is less so. He wants equality, which is a lot more difficult to define than one would think. But even then, becoming a brave warrior of the sea is just a more abstract concept. It's completely left to an individual's interpretation as to what qualifies as being a brave warrior of the sea. Which is why only Usopp can outline what it means for him personally, which leads into who Usopp is as a character, as a person. He has no problem talking himself up to the point of fibbing and to the point of absurdity, and we are quickly told the cause of this after we first meet him, which is that he and his mother were abandoned and his mother fell ill and died shortly after, which spawned his first lie that came from a place of hurt. The pirates are coming, the pirates, which would include his father Usopp, who he hoped would return, and then that grew into something much bigger, his own fantasies, like being the captain of thousands and poops the size of islands. And you could say that these fantasies, these grandiose adventures that he'd make up, maybe to justify Usopp leaving, where Usopp is thinking how great a pirate's life must be for someone to abandon their own family, which is a really sad state for someone to be pushed into. And Usopp himself is more aware of his own shortcomings than anyone else around him. Like the villagers' attitude towards him, he's a nuisance to them, but he himself just wants acknowledgement, which he gets in the form of Luffy and the others. He always had that bravery in him, for example when he stood up to Captain Kuro, who he had zero chance of beating. But he had something to protect, something and someone of meaning to him, and from there, although becoming a pirate meant taking a step forward, he was now in a position where he was completely out of his depth. Now everyone and everything around him is monstrous. He is greatly out of place in his current form. His world is full of insecurity, so even when he does take a step forward, he never thinks that step is big enough, which is why even now in the story he is still scared, he still lies and bluffs, because no matter what he does, he doesn't think it's enough, which is why these traits, which have been portrayed in a negative light, are still present. He's undoubtedly progressed, but the standards he's set for himself are so high that he can't grasp, he can't see how far he's climbed already, and that leads to the ultimate theme of Usopp's character, which is that it's okay to be scared. The definition of bravery, I would say, is showing courage in the face of adversity. When you are scared and when the odds are stacked against you, you can't be brave without facing obstacles, more specifically mental obstacles, because otherwise that's not bravery. That would be closer to arrogance maybe, which can be a good thing, but they're two separate concepts. And Usopp's biggest moments have come when he's acted despite his fear, not because he didn't have any, which is why I don't think we'll ever see Usopp acting with a demeanor akin to that of Luffy or Sanji or Zoro. Usopp will remain the pessimist, I think, but that will make it all the more sweeter when he does push through, because he'll do it with the weight of reality on his shoulders, since he is the most human of the Straw Hats, and that would arguably make his victories more valuable than any other. But with this said, when Usopp right now, as he is in the story, thinks of bravery, the image of Dory and Brogy's duel will still come to mind, and they fight without fear. Fighting is what they live for. So even though they are Usopp's greatest inspiration, he calls them masters, his masters, when they haven't trained him at all or anything like that. I don't think Usopp will ever be like them, in my opinion. Obviously because he's not a giant, but also I don't see a future where Usopp genuinely feels that confident walking into or taking part in a fight. And this is where the whole interpretation of what it means to be a brave warrior comes back into play, because Usopp's version will be unique. In the future, he may have an outward appearance that exudes stoicism, exudes calm and confidence, but on the inside he will still be terrified every step of the way, and that's what will define him. The moment that he understands that his fear is an advantage rather than a drawback, and we actively see him walking into situations while being scared, then he will be a brave warrior of the sea, if that's how Usopp himself defines it. That's my idea, although a fully buffed out, majestic warrior Usopp would not be bad either. It is kind of fascinating how pretty much all fan art of how Usopp will be like after elbaf is him looking like some kind of hero with the Mjolnir hammer on his shoulder, serious look on his face. Not that they don't look great, it's just interesting. So now all that's left is getting to that point. The in-between of now and then in the future, aka what's Usopp going to do in this arc. I get the feeling he's going to have a really rough time here. To begin with, he has the giants eating out of the palm of his hand with his tall tails. He's bigging himself up and the giants are eating it up. And he can get the likes of Oimo and Kashi and Hyruden to back him up because of what they have seen or have misunderstood in some cases with Sogeking and God Usopp, so they'll believe what he says. But there will come times in this arc where he will have to take action only to fail, and a reality check where he knows he needs to fix up. It's the Warland, so I foresee plenty of fighting and training, so Usopp will have many opportunities to grow, and I also see him developing a close friendship with Prince Loki, who is in his 60s, which for a giant I guess would be around 20 years old in human years. I don't think Loki is going to be a bad guy, maybe misunderstood similarly to Usopp. Maybe Loki has also been surrounded by monsters his whole life, like Dory and Brogy and the rest of the giant warrior pirates, who were around and terrorizing the world long before he was even born, so maybe he's heard tales about their exploits. And his family, like a Thor or Odin, who will be terribly strong if they do appear. Loki, just like Usopp, is the odd one out. Maybe the giants have this image in their minds of Loki, who is this great fighter, really charismatic. They put him on a pedestal when in reality Loki is nothing like that. Maybe that's how Usopp develops. He sees someone just like him so he can finally see and question, do I act like that? Am I viewed like that? And maybe Luffy or someone else points it out to him first and it sticks with him or something, then we move from there. What if Usopp becoming a brave warrior of the sea has nothing to do with how strong he actually gets? What if he barely gets any stronger at all? I doubt it, but for this discussion let's just go with that. No huge power up, no Mjolnir, no Conqueror's Haki. What if him becoming a brave warrior is all to do with him conquering his own mind, if that makes sense, not letting his fear control him? Do you think that in this arc there will come a moment where the giants question Usopp on his exploits, his tales, his heroism, where they call him out on his lies? Maybe not. What if there's a moment where Usopp himself comes forward and says, I'm not strong, I'm not this, I'm not that. He tells them that he's been lying and he's not this great man he's made himself out to be. Or maybe there isn't any confrontation like this at all and Usopp just works on himself behind the scenes away from the giants, maybe with Loki or without. And the first time they see him in action is after he's developed, after he's conquered himself. Will Usopp get Conqueror's Haki? I'm not ruling it out, but I'm also not going to get my hopes up. Will Usopp wield Mjolnir? I see it as very, very likely, especially with his own history of using multiple ton hammers, regardless of whether they were fake or not. Will Usopp walk out of elbaf as a brave warrior of the sea? Or will elbaf only make his path of getting there crystal clear and he will become a brave warrior once the journey is complete? That's for Usopp himself to decide.